All right, we'll continue into exercise 6, which is an optional exercise. And in this optional exercise, we'll create a horizontal alignment using known PI locations. As we begin in exercise 6, a couple of things I want to be sure you're aware of. First of all, if you haven't done so already, turn off the active design standards in the design standards toolbar. And we can modify our view a little. If you need to move the profile view. And as we get started, let's focus in on view 1. And be sure that view 1 is active. And we will zoom out. We'll focus on building a horizontal alignment using these red circles that are displayed from the reference file that we attached earlier in the in the class. And we'll use those circles as our PI locations and build a horizontal alignment along that corridor. Before we get started, let's turn on the feature definition toggle bar. Again, that could be docked at the top of MicroStation as mine was, or you may need to go to General Geometry and actually turn it on using the icon you see here on my screen. We want to define the feature definition on that toggle bar. Once it's opened, we'll browse into the feature definitions, into the roadway folder, and then we'll use the feature definition road underbar centerline. Then be sure to click the active button to make that feature definition active. And we can dock that back if it wasn't docked previously. So we've defined the active feature definition. We also want to turn on the key in dialog box in MicroStation. If that key in dialog is not on currently, you can turn it on by going to the Utilities menu in MicroStation and selecting the key in window. We can minimize that so we just have the key in window, and then it can be docked either above, I'll dock it there, within the MicroStation menu. Now we're ready to create the horizontal geometry along this corridor. To do that, we'll go to horizontal geometry, and we're going to use the command complex by PI. So I'll select that command, untoggle the radius, and we'll begin placing the PIs following or snapping to the centers of these circles. So I'll zoom in as we get started. Zoom into the southernmost circle. We can turn on the center snap if we like. Snap to the center of that circle, and I'll begin drawing my first section of the alignment. The command we're using will complex these elements together as we create them. So we're going to create tangents and arcs simultaneously, and they will be a complex element when we're finished. We can now key in the radius that we want to use for the first curve. So I'll key in 600. I hit the tab key to lock the radius. And now once that radius is defined, I will snap to the second PI location in data point. And we'll continue drawing that alignment into the next PI location. I'll turn on the center snap. Snap to the next PI location. And then as I am creating the last section, the last curve and tangent section, I key in 400 for the last curve. You can see it being drawn on the screen. And finally, to locate the northernmost PI, I'm going to use the key in window in MicroStation. So while the alignment is still floating, I'll move up to the key in window and follow the directions within the PDF, and I'll key in XY equals So I'm keying in the X and the Y value for the location of the last PI, and then I'll hit the Enter key. And now I can right-click to end the command. As I mentioned before, you can also hit the Escape key on your keyboard to end the command. And now we can click onto that horizontal alignment that we've created, and we can see that it is a complex element. We can select that element, we can go to the properties of that element, and we can name that alignment. And we will name it East Road. Now, after renaming the alignment, and if I select that alignment, there are a couple of things to note when we generate horizontal geometry and vertical geometry. There are rules and relationships assigned to those elements. We can modify those elements in several ways. First of all, say for example we'd like to modify the radius of that curve. We can select the dimension 400, and we could change that, hit the Enter key, and change the radius of that curve to 500. We can also, if we zoom in to the end point of this alignment, and as I hover over the end point, you'll notice there are several handlers there. The first arrow, as I hover, allows me to change the direction of the line, but not the distance. The other arrow allows me to change the distance, but not the direction of the line. And finally, if I select the actual circle, that allows me to move the point around in any direction for any distance. You can see those changes here. You could also change direction and distance via the dimensions. Again, click on the dimension and modify the distance, for example, by keying in a new value. After creating the horizontal alignment, and we've looked at editing that horizontal alignment, finally we want to assign a design standard to that alignment. So as we've done previously in the other exercises, we can use the Design Standards toolbar. We'll browse in to our library, and we will browse down, and we'll select the 20 mile/hour design speed. Then we'll select the button to allow us to assign it to an alignment. So I will follow the prompt. I'll select the alignment, and then right-click to end. Now that design speed and those design standards have been stored on that horizontal alignment. If I change that radius, you'll notice now, which is a little difficult to see at this point, but now if I decrease that radius drastically, you can see that I'm getting the error message indicating that I've gone below the minimum radius, or the radius is less than the default radius based off of my design speed. And we can zoom back out and change our view. And that will conclude exercise 6.